All right, everybody, time for the panel. Let's all gather to your respective tables or standing room only in this place, of course. So we're talking records, music, vinyl, all that wonderful stuff. And here's our beautiful, eclectic-looking, mostly talented, I'm kidding, all talented panel right now. So you've had a chance to mingle, kind of learn about Joey's song, all that kind of stuff. So our distinguished panelists tonight bring a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I'm excited to introduce you to each one of them. And the intricacies of modern vinyl production, from start of recording the songs to the end of the product to, of course, vinyl. And vinyl is actually coming back. It has been for the last 10 years, so we're right on trend, Rob, right on trend. Good job. Okay, so first I'd like to introduce Lauren McDonald. You're on Electric Audio. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Mac, or Lauren, or Mac, whichever. I work at Electrical Audio as a staff engineer. I'm here because I worked with Steve Albini a lot.
Can't do
and I'm
anything
also
without
running
the
sound
electrical.
tonight.
All right. And Rob, we all know you already.
Yeah, you introduced me earlier today.
I know.
But if we could have everybody's attention, because we have an important panel, you'll have a 15-minute break in between the band and this panel. You could schmooze all you want. So
he's way better at getting your attention than me, apparently.
Anyways, I'm just happy to be here,
Yeah.
and it's just a privilege to play with the band. It's a privilege to be on this panel, and it's great, connecting with Lisa.
All right, thanks, Rob. All right, you guys ready? Okay, I know. Adam, I know. And our next panelist is Adam Grace. Tell us about yourself, Adam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Grace. I am the drummer in the band, Rob's partner in crime, I think. I think I'm the member who's been in the band the longest, technically. Rob put this all together. It's all really a lot of hard work. And, he's just as hard on us in rehearsal as he is on all of you.
Yeah, wow. His wife's a teacher, so maybe that's where he gets it, right? All right, thanks, Adam. And Stacy McMichael, and I got to tell you, I know Stacy because I've seen her perform at Teatro Zanzani. I've seen her at Le Piano, and she's a badass bass player. Yeah. And I follow her on Instagram, too. She's so great, I must say.
I need
I
you
just gave
all
you your
the time.
bio and
just announce me everywhere.
Exactly.
This is great.
Yeah.
I'm Stacey McMichael. I'm a bass player in Chicago, clearly at a lot of places.
Go check her out. She's awesome.
Yeah, so it's fun. So
I know. It's good to see you here.
Thanks.
Okay. And Andre Adtu Daniels, the governor of the Chicago Grammy chapter. We're honored to have you here.
Hello.
Looking
Whoa,
sharp today.
My mic is loud. Okay. My name is Andre Adtu Daniels. I'm a professor at Columbia College. I'm also a regional director of a program called Guitars Over Guns. And then, as she mentioned before, I am one of the governors for our Midwest chapter for the Grammys. And I'm also like a pretty good dog dad. And also, I'm a new dad as well. So, this is cool. This is all right. I'm glad to be out the house. So, appreciate that. If you wanted to play the Elmo song, it would be right on brand for me. I listen to that all the time. So, glad to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
And Rob, you're not fixing my car tonight, so tell me a little bit about why you're wearing this. It's a special reason. He looks a little like a mechanic.
If you see Lauren and I, or Mac, so we had the opportunity to work with Steve Albini. When we were in session with Steve Albini, he wore this suit. And in honor of Steve, Mac and I wanted to, remember Steve in a very fond way. So, Mac, did you want to say anything about Steve? Or?
Oh, I mean, Steve changed my life, really. He's a mentor to me. He taught me almost everything I know about recording. He wore these jumpsuits for pretty much every session, all 30 years that Electrical Audio has been open. It used to be uniform for a lot of the engineers, but while staff engineers kind of stopped wearing them, he wore this every single day. The colors have changed over the years. There's been red and navy and all sorts, but every single day he would show up. If he was ready to work, he would say, he'd show up in his jumpsuit, so.
Thanks, you guys. All right, let's start the questioning here. So we're talking about vinyl, how to make a record. I think everyone's kind of interested in that. I did a story once on a place called Smash Plastic, and it's in Chicago, and it's the coolest thing to watch. Not only how you record, you use an engineer, then you see the vinyl come out as it is, and I think it's really a great process to talk about. It's kind of exciting, and this is why you guys are all here. So let's ask first, what are some key things you have to rehearse, obviously, before you get studio time and all that good stuff? Kind of tell me a little bit about how it begins, like the very beginning of the dream when you do an album. I mean, I think that's the beginning, right?
So there are a couple of different scenarios in which you record. There are ones where you go in and you just do your own instrument to whatever else has been done before you, or you set it up first, or you do an entire live band recording. This album was all of us in, 1.5 rooms live at the same time. A lot of record. You can do a record one of two ways.
Okay, and how long does something like this take? Anybody can answer.
Well, so, I mean, going back to the question before about how do you prepare?
Yeah.
I mean, the rehearsal is going to be different depending on the type of situation you're in. So with this gig with Rob, I mean, we only got together twice beforehand, so everybody had to do a lot of their own preparation. Then we sit down, we sort of work through the parts, and everybody sort of figures out what they're doing. And as Stacy said, I mean, some of it you're just kind of making it in the studio as you're going along. I've got another band I play with pretty regularly. We were in the studio earlier this year. We spent 3 months working on 6 songs every Monday night, and you're just running them and running them and running them until you can play them like falling asleep. And being the drummer, one of the things that a lot of people have to get used to when they go into the studio is the way things are recorded nowadays. Lots of things are either synced up to tracks or things are done electronically, and so you've got to play along what's called a click track. As a drummer, I'm very familiar with a click track. It's really just a fancy name for a metronome, but you put different things behind it. And a lot of musicians aren't used to playing with that, and so that's really keeping steady time. So one of the things you might want to do in getting ready is you actually rehearse with the click track, because when you get into the studio, you got to make sure everything's lining up. Makes the whole process run a lot more smoothly.
Yeah, and I'm glad they mentioned rehearsing because especially as we're getting into different genres, like especially in hip hop, that's become a lost art for us. So many people think that it's just a thing you can show up with and just do. Like some rappers be like, man, I can just come in there and freestyle everything. It's like, no, you can't. All right, some of this stuff needs to be prepared so that you're not just winging it. And so, and the more that you go into it prepared, the better the end product is going to be. So, like, just to know what you have coming into it, then that also leaves room for, like, those moments of, like we always say, when God enters the room, where out of nowhere, everything comes together, or somebody does something different, you're like, oh, let's just go with it. Let's go with that energy that's there. So, but that preparation is very, very key in order to make the record sound as beautiful as it can be.
And time is money, right? When you have to rent a room, you got to get it done and get it ready and all that stuff. You guys all have to be on your game right away, right? Okay. Rob, anything you want to add at this point?
Well, the only thing I'll add is that every musician has to prepare in advance for these sessions. And when we did our session, everybody came to those 2 rehearsals really prepared, rock solid. We went over and over and over. And it's just a testament to these musicians as to, how this whole thing came together. And if you do get an album, and we'd be happy to sign it for you, you'll hear an amazing output. And it's because of these musicians, it's because of Steve Albini and, the mastering and Third Man. It was a combination of all.
You mentioned Steve Albini. Talk a little bit about each of your experience with working with him and how that really made everything come together with this.
Why doesn't Stacy go?
Okay.
The coolest thing I've ever seen in my life, because we recorded it's a old school kind of, we recorded tape. It's not commonplace now, and there was just some error, and we're like, oh, well, we didn't.
I came in late.
There was a little error, and like, because we weren't recording to a computer and digital, I'm like, oh, well, it happened. He's like, hold on, and he walks over, doesn't even like really listen to anything, he just walks over, rewinds the tape, cuts some things, and cuts the piece of tape and hands it to Adam, and he's like, here you go, like, it's the cool, I mean, this is my job, it's what I do for a living, and it's the coolest, hands down, experience I've ever seen in the studio. Just because everything now is so computer and Pro Tools and all these like programs that can help you record, and he was just like tape in the corner, just cutting things out.
So
awesome.
Steve was actually a living, breathing analog version of Pro Tools. For those of you who don't know, Pro Tools is one of these computer programs that a lot of musicians use to do their own recording. They'll record tracks together. And when you do live recording and you're using Pro Tools, you can take if a beat's like just this far off, the engineer can just move it back or move it forward a little bit. Or sometimes you hear the term auto-tune. It can be used creatively in a lot of music, but a lot of times what it's being used for is just to get somebody who's not quite singing on pitch. The great thing about working with Steve was we were working in analog, as Stacy said. So these were reel-to-reel tapes, and you needed somebody who knew what they were doing. And it was like the mad scientist just disappearing into the corner. He came back. I actually still have that little piece of tape. It's really cool, and it was just really sort of something special to see him work.
The kids would call that old school, right? But I think we're all old
It's
school.
older
here,
than
right?
old school.
I think so, reel to reel for sure. What's the difference between digital and analog and all this stuff? I mean, when it comes to pressing vinyl, recording vinyl, all that stuff, I mean, your experience has been amazing with how it used to be done, but how it still can be done.
Yeah, the difference between recording to magnetic tape and recording to a digital platform, it's not much on the input side, but the actual engineering and the actual pressing the buttons and the making decisions is so much more complicated because there's a significant amount more science, basically, physics, math, all of that. You have to have an insane understanding of electronics. Like everything that's going into running this tape machine is something that you never ever have to think about when you can just open a computer and hit record. Another thing is that, like they were saying, like you can't just willy-nilly make edits on different tracks. Like once things are cut, they're on tape, everybody all playing at once, it's all together, and you can't just nitpick and like take one part out of the bass here and cut it here. So of course it takes a great deal of preparation on the band's end, but it also there's so much methodology and technique, I guess, that comes to recording with tape. Even just like hitting record and timing it right with a band, getting it ready is like an exact, like there's a delay amount of seconds or whatever. I don't know. It's all so complicated, and you have to think about things way more than you do on digital. And Steve made it look beyond easy, which is just like insane. Anytime I'm doing it, you feel so frazzled. There's a million things everywhere. And he was just cool as a cucumber, absolutely masterful, and just made it look so easy. So.
Now, from
if
a
I
fan,
could, if I could add
Absolutely.
about, because I've got
course
a
you can.
build up
This is
on,
your event.
on what
Go
Matt.
ahead.
Thank you for letting me talk. I appreciate that, Lisa. So one of the things that was really important to us in our band was the sound, like the output that we were going to get. And I remember after Jim introduced me to Steve, I started listening to Nirvana and In Utero, which is the album that Steve produced. And I was listening to the drummer. So I was comparing, Dave Grohl, the drummer of Nirvana, to the drummer I had back in '85. And it wasn't a comparison of the actual performance. It was really about the sound. And when Adam came in, when we were prepping for our session with Steve Albini that day, Adam came in and Steve had about 12 or 14 microphones, and he mic'd all the different drums and the cymbals, and he put mics on the floor, and he got this live sound of our band. Stacy sounds amazing, Adam sounds amazing, like the whole band sounded incredible because Steve was so meticulous. This guy was like, he'd write down every little thing, and to what Mac was saying, it was like a well-oiled machine, and he was not flustered at all. And I knew that we would do take after take after take, and I knew that we had a good take when Steve, through our headphones, he would say one word, bravo, and we knew that was a good take.
So I know as a record lover, we love the old school of us, love the crackle of the record. So tell me a little bit about why you guys decided and the decision making in making a vinyl album rather than going the digital way.
If anybody has a turntable, how many people have a turntable out there? If you listen to a vinyl record versus a CD versus a tape, you will hear that it sounds much more clearer, much better. Sure, CDs and even streaming, has an unbelievable sound. But I think that the sound that vinyl has, and there's a resurgence, like Lisa said, of vinyl coming back. And one of the big reasons is because of that sound. And if you want to touch on
Kids
that.
today don't know
I don't
that.
have a record. I don't have a record player.
Okay.
You know that.
Right, we got together on that. Anybody else want to talk about vinyl?
I would like to speak a little bit to the value of physical media in general. Having an actual vinyl in your hands is so important. It will last as long as it can, as long as you keep it well, and you'll always be able to put it on a record player and it'll play. Steve Albini always wanted to record tape because tape is similar. If you store it properly, it can live 100 years completely fine. Rob was saying his tapes had to be restored, and that was just a matter of putting them in a little oven for a couple days, and then it's playable again. And so Steve would always talk about how digital media, you never know if your flash drive will break or if your WAV file won't be playable in 10 years or on a certain computer, and CDs only last 20 years and all of this, whereas you can put an album on tape, stick that tape in your basement, and in 100 years, maybe with a little bit of baking, it'll still be playable. You still have your record in your hands. You won't ever be able to lose it. So.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to just to throw in there as well is that there's something about vinyl is because, like, you have to curate your listening session. Like, it's one of the few mediums where it's like now we got everything on our phone. We can listen to it wherever we go. We had CDs, it was in the car, where we can still listen to that as we're driving and we're going places, can be distracted by whatever else is happening. But vinyl is one of those experiences where you have to sit down and you have to experience it where you are. And there's a level of value that's there versus where if it's kind of like it's sitting on our phone, like it exists, but it doesn't. It's like if somebody had like, yeah, I'm going to take away your internet, then it's like, I can't listen to this, right? But if it's a piece of vinyl, it's like, I have this. This is tangible. And when I sit down, I'm making sure that I have the right scenario around me. I'm listening with the intent of enjoying it in this moment and nothing else.
It's true. I have a 15-year-old nephew, and I buy him vinyls now for Christmas. And so, we're doing some good things for the next generation as far as that goes. I mentioned pressing and how I loved seeing how that was all done. How do you get to that point? Pressing. I'll also talk about how you guys came up with your cover, your album cover, the artwork, that kind of thing.
Which you want to
Anyone can answer. You guys are all artwork.
I guess I'll start with the
pressing.
artwork.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Rob did for us during the session was he brought in a professional photographer, Mika Hemmond. She did a great job. All the photos on the back of the album cover, if you have the album cover, Mika took. She basically disappeared sort of like a fly on the wall and just did a really nice job of sort of getting some action shots and everything. And then she took a couple of pictures of the band just as a group. There's a nice photo of all of us with Steve on the back as well. And then Rob was looking around for somebody to sort of do something for the cover. And my daughter actually does a lot of work with computer graphics and designing a lot of different things. And she does a lot of work sort of taking photographs and sort of redoing them in a different way. And Rob worked with Golda. She had this idea about having everybody on the album sort of look like they were actually from a type of art from a different type of generation. And so if you look closely at the album, you'll see there's sort of a different style. Of course, she took, the bald guy and made him really white, like the old Aha video. I don't know. Tells you something about my parenting, I guess, that I got that. But in any case, Golda came up with that, working with Rob, and that's sort of how the album cover got put together,
Yeah,
at least.
I think when we were little, we always
you all
talked
have
about
the
what we
album,
wanted
right?
to have.
They've all bought it?
I was just saying, like, I bet y'all, when we were little, we always used to think about, like, what would our album cover look like? That kind of thing. Did you all dream of that before you were musicians? Just a random question. Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
Come
no,
on.
I definitely
Admit
did.
it.
I had several versions of the album cover that I had in my life.
Exactly.
All of them were terrible, too. Don't worry.
Go ahead, Stacey.
I was not bald on mine.
Right.
I was just saying, like, the album's here for them to buy, right? You guys
It's
all
right up
have
front.
it,
so-
right?
Check it out.
Yeah, right up front, there's albums to purchase.
That's
Yes.
why we're here.
Yes. Getting to your question about the pressing. The pressing is an intricate process. And if you've ever created a piece of artwork and then it comes back to you and you have to, like a test press, you have to listen to it over and over again. So the reason for that is that they actually take this shell, this lacquered shell, and press the album. And after they press it, they get us some test copies. And Stacy, Adam, and I were fortunate to listen to those. And then we have to give them feedback. The cracks, the snapples, their snap, crackle, and pops. So
The best part.
Yes, not a cereal box, but I would like you guys to talk about like when we got together and you listened to the test presses, and some were good, some were bad, and tell everybody about that process.
Well, some of them, it's the same songs, the same 2 songs, so it's front and back, but some of them were just a lot warmer. Some of them just the EQ was different. It's really nuanced and subtle, but it makes a world of difference. And then we're just like, oh, at 2 minutes and 30 whatever seconds, this happened. So.
Well, that sort of goes back to what we were talking about before, the difference between analog and digital, is I actually didn't realize after all these years, 2 different albums could sound completely different. They're the same song, but it's just how the album was put together. I don't know what technically it is, if it's the depths of the grooves or whatever, but you could really hear a difference. And then we're like, okay, that's the good one, that one not so much, that one, it's really tinny, really kind of high. It was really kind of interesting just to go through the process and actually hear, okay, they're all the same medium, but unlike a CD, each one's not exactly the same.
Yeah, that's actually because pressing the vinyl is the last part of the process called mastering, which is the final part of getting any album or song ready to be listened to. And depending on what medium you're going to distribute, be vinyl, CD, streaming, whatever, you master it in a different way. So that's dealing with loudness, dealing with EQ. But so it makes sense that they would all sound different because you have to remaster for each different type of medium that you're going to release it on, basically, to make it sound optimal for that medium.
And one last thing is, it's very important when they do the pressing, because if they do it first thing in the morning and that press hasn't gone, we were hearing so many defects within certain songs. And what had to happen is the guy that mastered our records, Bob Weston from Chicago Mastering Service, had to write a letter to Third Man and say, hey, you got to redo this. And they did, and they actually ran the presses in an afternoon, and it came out so much better.
If you ever have a chance to go to see a record pressing manufacturer, they have some kind of tours and stuff. It's really cool to watch. The last thing I'm going to ask you, I guess personally, is this is such a passion project for you and all of you. What was it like when it was hot off the presses and you got your first look at the album? I mean, that has to be a emotional kind of experience when you put all that kind of work in that. I've never had a record out, so I don't know what that feels like.
I mean, I guess I'll go first. As I said, my daughter did the album cover. Of course,
well,
I was excited.
That too.
I didn't even have to open it. It was just sort of seeing the final result. And as Mac was saying before, you have that physical object that's something you're going to have all the time. And we have all these, all these photos on your phone. How many times do you look at that photo you took 2.5 years ago that you don't even remember you took? With an album cover, it's right there.
Yeah, really cool.
So you've got it.
And they have frames now. You can put them on the wall, too. I have a lot of those. Anybody from the audience have any questions for the band about record pressing, about how do you make an album? Anyone thinking about making an album? Who's going to buy a turntable after tonight? Because they've got to play this record, right? All right, I gotcha.
We got one back there.
Awesome,
it's Flex.
awesome. You can get them on Amazon anywhere. Turntables are everywhere now.
You can come up, right? Can we hear Flex?
Do we have a question? I got to put my glasses. Okay, come on, Kat. What's your name?
His name is Flex.
Hey, Flex, come on up here. You got a cool.
How about a hand for Flex?
You got a great name. There you go. Okay.
Hey, Rob, thanks for having us. I'm a good friend of Rob's. We both went to Loyola. So my question is, we live in an era of nostalgia, and Gen Z is discovering, everything, right? And vinyl is, new. I'm interested more in the economics. How do you make vinyl affordable to the next generation that's discovering all this good stuff?
You don't have to. No, I mean, because it's such a, there's a value on something that you physically have. Like, we can listen to anything on streaming. We pay $13 or something now. But when you make an investment, people want to be a part of something. And the very act of like buying, so that's why cassette tapes are making a resurgence for some reason. No one has a cassette player, but they just want to support. They want something. Because when you have something and you have a tangible item, it has more value than the 30 seconds I'm going to skip over on a playlist. So you can't, vinyl is incredibly expensive, but you can command the prices so you don't lose your butt completely. Because people, they want to support and they want a cool item.
And I think what's old is new again, and you guys are hitting the sweet spot with the new generation, you know, realizing how cool we were in the 80s and, you know, that kind of thing. So they want to listen to all this kind of music remixed through vinyl. You were going to say something?
No, I was just gonna say that because in this, I over the past maybe 15 years, I've watched music become very devalued, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
but this is art. Like, there's people who spent hours upon hours who invested into this music. There's people who have life stories in this music. There are blood, sweat, and tears in this music. And so if we can't at least support the people who have made the soundtracks to our lives, who have made the music that we live, the life stories that we have, like, it's hard to be able to say, like, let's keep devaluing it even more. Like, it's already to the point where people don't want to pay for anything. So, but this stuff has value, and when you have it in the house, and it sits up there on the wall, or if somebody sees you have it, it's a story to tell. You're like, hey, what's this record? And you can tell them, like, hey, I bought it from this band that I really love. And then if you have it signed, then this has additional value. And, like, we don't have stories like that. I can't get my MP3 signed from somebody, you know? I can't have you sign my phone. I'm sorry. I like my phone the way it is.
That's a good point.
It's already got enough cracks as it is. But I feel like these things are the things that we have connection to, and the artists are worth paying the money for and supporting. So.
Yeah, that's a good question. He was talking about economically and really the future of vinyl. We have another question. Come on up. You're
It's
the Price is
Lorraine.
Right. No.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Kasperzak, and I am a friend of Rob's, of course. So the question is for Rob, and actually for all of you. Rob, when you were 17 and 18 and recorded that and put it away, did you ever think you would be here today doing this?
I'm not asking. I'm looking at you because you represent Gene Simmons for me. So I never thought that I would be here today. You know, remember when I was 17 or 18 years old, I got contacted by a company called Showco, and Showco. The reason I got contacted is I actually had a friend that was a tour manager for Angela Bofill. Does anybody remember Angela Bofill? She was a really good jazz singer. And so he's like, hey, dude, I can connect you with Showco, and you could be on their road crew. I'm like, cool. And so Showco, back then in the 80s, Showco contacted me, and I filled out, an application, and they called me, because back then we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet or whatever, and they said, we'd like you to come out to LA because we want to interview you. What do you think my parents said when I came up to them and said, Mom, Dad, I got some exciting news. I'm 17, 18 years old. I'm flying to LA to interview with Showco. Now, for those who don't know who Showco is or was at that time, they did sound and lighting for Led Zeppelin, for Rolling Stones, for Paul McCartney, for Bad Company. And I told my parents I'm going on tour with the Rolling Stones. So I have
No.
my mom's brother sitting right there, and he's shaking his head because my mother would never let me go. She said, absolutely not. You're going to college, and if after that you want to go to Showco or any other, type of companies like Showco, you can, but you're going to go to college first. So it kind of squashed my whole, musical journey. But had I not been, squashed, I never would have wound up with Insperity. And I have a bunch of great colleagues here today representing Insperity. Insperity is a great human resources company, and I never would have wound up with them. So you just never know what paths life is going to take you in.
And you would never have been here if you would
Right.
be with the Rolling Stones
And,
right
and
now.
so we could ask the rest of the panel,
Yeah.
at 17 or 18, did you ever think you would be here or do something like this? Right?
Yes.
That was really short.
Yes.
'Cause she's a badass bass
Yes,
player.
she is.
Okay. Honestly, I didn't. I was like, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I was the one friend who rapped out of all my friends. And I didn't think that there was too much of a future in it at first. And then here I am now, like the governor for our Grammy chapter. Just maybe 2 weeks ago, I performed with the Blackhawks at the United Center. And it's just a lot of things. And had a visit from the president at one time. Like, there's so much stuff that happened in my life that I never imagined that would happen if I would have, like, stopped making music. So I'm just really proud and honestly just, like, in awe of what happens when you just pursue your dreams. So, you know, if anybody is in here just thinking about going back and doing whatever the thing that you want to do it. Just go for it. That's all.
All right.
So when I was 17 and 18, I was like not the best drummer in my dual drummer band. So I was kind of, had a little bit of an inferiority complex back then. And, you know, my parents, of course, I wasn't going to go out on tour with the Rolling Stones. But, you know, I went out to college. I played in a band, a marching band in New York. And the great thing about it was it gave me access to a free practice space that I could get together with a couple other guys, you know, and then we decided at the end, oh yeah, we're taking on the world, we're going on the road, and my parents were actually supportive enough to say, they didn't say, no, you're not, but, you know, it's like, if that's what you want to do, that's what you're going to do, and that's what I did for a little while. You know, I eventually realized that that was not going to be the way I was going to make my living, but I got my 10,000 hours and I got my time in sort of learning how to play, and it was just one of those things. After college, then I cut my hair and went back to law school. Went a little bit more of a boring route, but then I kept coming back to it. I played in a big band for a while. That was something I hadn't had a chance to do before. I got together with some guys to play in a rock band. I just sort of tried a couple of different things, and it was those skills that you develop early on, the ability to read, the ability to work with people. Actually, as a lawyer, one of the most important things I ever did was try to make a living as a musician, because you're getting thrown into situations that you can't handle. You're working with some people who are really hard to work with, and you just got to kind of make it up as you go along. And you know what? Some people are going to like you and some people are not, but you just got to keep going. And it's just great preparation for life as much as anything else. And you get to meet some really cool people, too.
So I'll talk to you for a moment because we're talking about musicians here, but obviously we can't do it without the engineers, the audio, and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of young people, when they're, you know, exposed to the arts, it's a very important part of that, but a lot of young people want to go into like sound engineering and music mixing, things like that. Do you find that that's the case? Because obviously you can't do a record without people like that behind the scenes.
Yeah. When I was 17, 18, trying to figure out what I was going to go to college for, I knew I wanted to do something music related. I'm a drummer, but I didn't want to drum. Like, I knew I couldn't make a great living off that at my skill level. So at first I was like, oh, I'll go to college for music business or something, but I didn't really have an idea of what that was until I realized audio was even an option. Yeah. Nobody told me it was an option, so when I figured out, I was like, oh, this is exactly what I want. I just did a 4-year degree at Columbia. And
yes, Columbia has their own record store,
they have
a
an
record recording. I love it.
Amazing
Been
audio
there.
program. Couldn't have prepared me better. I got an internship at Electrical Audio my junior year, and that's when I met Steve. That's when I got into electrical. And then after I graduated, I went back to record, and they were like, hey, we're looking for someone. Are you around? I'm like, what? Like, that's crazy. Working in electrical is the dream job of any young engineer.
Yeah.
So what I would say is it's absolutely a great job option. Like, especially in live sound, there's so much opportunity. It's getting to work and make money in the music industry. It's my favorite thing. Music is my biggest passion. Like, getting to just go to shows every night for work is everything. Or just sitting in a studio making a record. It's absolutely everything to me. It's all I want to do. So I'm 23, turning 24 in a couple weeks. So if you say,
Very
if
nice.
I thought I would be here when I was 17 or 18, absolutely not.
Well, he talks
No,
about
never
following
in a
your
million
dreams, and
years.
you did it, and that's great. And you're part of the generation I keep ripping on, but I don't mean to. Anybody else have another question? We're excited to hear this build-up about these songs and these albums. It's so exciting. I think we're all waiting for that for sure. Any parting thoughts, Rob?
So, what do you think of this panel? Did you
Yes.
learn something? Yeah. Great panelists. How about my moderator, Lisa Fielding? A little hand for her.
Thank you, Lauren, Rob, Adam, Stacy, and Andre. Everybody, one more hand for them. We know everything about record making now, don't we? Great. We're going to take a short break here.